I'm Karen, one of your SNAP4CT nutritionists. Today we're talking all about tomatoes. Tomatoes are pretty popular, aren't they? They're in some of our favorite foods like pizzas, pastas, salads, and more. Let's start by talking about some fun facts. Did you know that Americans get more vitamins from tomatoes than any other vegetable? We need to work on that. Tomatoes are in the fruit family, but we serve and prepare them as a vegetable. Did you know that tomatoes are rich in an antioxidant called lycopene? This antioxidant is good for our hearts and helps prevent some types of cancers. Cooked tomatoes have more antioxidants than raw, so remember to eat them both raw and cooked. Did you know that there are thousands of varieties of tomatoes? They are categorized into three main types: cherry, plum, and slicing. Tomatoes are rich in vitamins A and C, as well as potassium. Now let's talk about how to choose tomatoes at the farmer's market or grocery store. You want to look for red or reddish orange tomatoes that give slightly when pressed. Don't buy any tomatoes that are bruised, soft, or moldy. We have some tomatoes here that are yellow and almost a deeper purple color. Don't worry, it's not that those aren't ripe, that's just their natural color. Now let's talk about how to store those tomatoes once you get them home. Leave your tomatoes on the counter out of direct sunlight to help them ripen. They'll ripen in about 2 to 3 days, and the reason you don't want to leave them in the sunlight is because the tomatoes will lose their vitamin C. Both ripe and cut tomatoes should be refrigerated. Both types will last in the refrigerator for about 2 days. After that, they lose their flavor. Store ripe whole tomatoes stem side down. Here's the stem side. So you want it laying that way. And we do that because we don't want the tomato to lose moisture from that stem scar. Wash tomatoes under running water when you're ready to eat them. Don't soak tomatoes in standing water because we don't want water to get absorbed through that stem scar. And that could potentially lead to contamination. Now let's talk about the best part, eating those tomatoes. So for best results, you want to cut a tomato with what's called a serrated knife. As you can see here, this is a knife that has those teeth. It almost looks like a saw versus a straight knife. You could cut a tomato with one of these straight knives, but you'd want to make sure it's very sharp, and let me show you why that is. Okay, so I'll first start by cutting with our regular straight edge knife. It's almost, you've got to apply quite a bit of pressure to cut through that tomato, and that's smushing it a little bit. Versus when you use a serrated knife, those teeth on the knife, they help relieve some of that pressure. So you can just slice down very easily with very little pressure. As you can see, the bottom of this tomato got a little bit bruised, whereas this one, there wasn't any bruising. Tomatoes can be eaten raw or cooked. If you were gonna cook them, you could bake them, saute them, boil them, grill them. There's lots of great options. You can add chopped tomatoes to eggs in the morning, mash or chop tomatoes for a quick salsa, or you can stir fry tomatoes. For instance, in the summer, you might like to chop up some tomatoes with zucchini, eggplant, summer squash, and do a nice stir fry. Today I'm gonna show you one great way to prepare tomatoes. We'll be making our stuffed tomatoes recipe. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is to preheat your oven to broil. Now let's start working with our tomatoes. So I've sliced these large slicing tomatoes in half. What we need to do is take out the seeds and water. Do that just with a spoon and scoop around and discard those seeds. Put them on our tray. Here's another one. Sometimes it helps just to use your hands. There we go. We're taking out those seeds and water because when we bake them, we don't want it to get too watery. Also, we need room for our stuffing. Here at SNAP4CT, we don't waste anything. So what you could do is you could take these tomato pieces and put them into a sauce. Now that we've got our tomatoes ready, let's stuff them. In my bowl, I have our stuffing mixture. This has breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, fresh basil, fresh parsley, garlic, and I did add some other dried seasonings to give it some more flavor. Now remember that if you don't have fresh herbs, you can always substitute dried. What we added today were rosemary, thyme, oregano, and pepper, and that can give it a little bit of an Italian flavor. So we just combined all those ingredients, and now all we have to do is spoon them into our tomatoes. The last step before we get these into the oven is to add a little drizzle of olive oil on top. Okay, we'll just do a light drizzle. Okay, now these tomatoes are ready to bake. You'll just put them in that preheated oven for 5 minutes until the tops are golden brown and crunchy. Let me show you what that looks like when it comes out of the oven. Look at these. These are just beautiful. You can see that cheese melted into the golden brown, and they look delicious and ready to eat. Remember, the average adult needs about 2.5 cups of vegetables per day. Remember, it's not that hard to do. Thank you for joining me today to learn a little bit more about tomatoes. I hope you learned something new. Find our recipe, stuffed tomatoes, on the website SNAP4CT.org. Take care.